And most of the time, if she were in a situation where she wasn't so desperate, she would have noticed early appearing red flags. For example, after meeting for just a few short weeks, he wants to move in with her and he's telling her all of these wonderful things on why they should move in together, and him moving in with her benefits him. Those are red flags. Even with somebody that you really like, to move that fast, that quickly is alarming. She would have noticed that he's not producing what he said he's producing. Those are red flags. Welcome back to the Therapist React series. If this is your first time here, this is the series where I cover things going on in the news or in pop culture to highlight the mental health aspects so that we can have improved mental health. Now, I was recently introduced to a series on TikTok that the whole world is talking about, and it's called Who the Did I Marry? And I didn't know anything about this. I'd heard about it being talked about. I've heard about it being discussed. And finally, I just thought, I've got to go and check some of this out and see what this is about. And here's a very, very quick breakdown because I have a response to this that is probably going to shock a lot of people. As a psychotherapist, when I watch stories like this, I need to bring real knowledge and information to these stories because I think there's a lot of people just throwing about opinions. And I want to ground this video series and this conversation into actual content that makes sense and actual content that is based on what we know clinically. So before I say anything else, if you're not familiar with this series, let me give you a quick little rundown. So this is a series about a woman. Her name is Risa, and she met a man in March of 2020, right at the very, very beginning of COVID. She met him online and they super hit it off. After a very short period of time, as the world is shutting down, maybe 2 or 3 weeks in, they decide to move in together. Now, I'm going to highlight something really quick. That is the first red flag, is if you meet someone and it's super intense, and that person is throwing about ideas where we should move in together and we should combine finances, those things are red flags. And I'm telling you that now because that's going to play a role in what I'm going to say later. He described himself as a high earning individual, and he talked about all this money that he had and this job that he had. And he literally got up every day and he went to work at 7 a.m. and he came back at 4 p.m. He did all these things to give this woman this impression that he had this massive job. And she ended up getting pregnant just a couple months later. I believe she got pregnant in April, so that's just a month after they moved in together. And then things start getting even more concerning. They attempt to buy a house for $600,000. He describes himself as being approved for $750,000, but he won't provide the bank with proof of his income and proof of that amount of money. So they lose the house. They try again, and this time, Risa, the woman in this story, plays a bigger role in the application process. And once again, he refuses to show proof of income, and they lose the opportunity for a house. The story starts to get a little bit more tragic. She catches him cheating, talking to other women on Facebook Messenger. She catches him cheating with prostitutes and finds out that he's doing kinkier things with them that he is willing to do with her. And he has described himself with her saying, I'm not into those things, but she finds out he's doing these things with prostitutes. She ends up losing the baby via miscarriage, which I have to imagine is associated with the stress and pain that she must have been going through as she's learning about all these things. I mean, to sum it up, he literally lied about everything. He lied about his relationship with his family. He said some lie that he and his ex-wife had a child and that child passed away from COVID, and he asked her if he could take $2,000 and send it to the ex-wife to help deal with the loss. And of course, tugging on the woman's heartstrings, she gives the $2,000 later to find out that none of that happened and none of that was true. Risa ends up talking to family members. She ends up talking to the ex-wife herself. She ends up talking to all these people, and they all confirm that this man is a pathological liar and nothing he says can be trusted. He has a twin brother, and the twin brother is actually living the life that this man described. The twin brother is a high earning individual, and the twin brother actually does do these things. Throughout this process, the man in the story would claim to be talking to the brother for 90 minutes per day. The brother later says, we haven't spoken in years. Like, he literally lied about everything. Now, I do want to say, a lot of times, as I look online, a lot of the commenters are saying this man is a narcissist and a sociopath and all these things. And here's what I'll say to you guys about that. Like, I'm a psychotherapist. I literally have the information to diagnose this stuff. And in order to diagnose him as a narcissist or a sociopath or any of those other things, I would need way more information. It is possible just to be a habitual or pathological liar and an absolute asshole without being a narcissist. A narcissist is a very specific amount of criteria that needs to be met. And it is clear that this man is a con artist. This man is a jerk. This man is a liar. But that doesn't make him a narcissist. So, just as an example, a narcissist is someone who lacks the ability to put themselves in another person's shoes. And that makes them capable of horrible atrocities, which is why I would say this man very well might be a narcissist, but it's such an extreme thing that there are other criteria that I would have to know in order to make this diagnosis with this person. And I would have to know more about his history. And by the way, it is clear he is lying and manipulating for the purposes of getting something: companionship with this woman, sexual rewards, all of those things. But as a narcissist, I would need to look at the scope of his entire life. Like, does he do this all the time, or does he only do it with women to get the things that he wants? Like, that is how you start looking at a narcissist. And you would have to do a battery of tests and exams and go over way more of his history. Oftentimes, narcissists have things like animal abuse in their past because they lack the empathy to know that if I'm torturing an animal, that animal is actually experiencing harm. You can be just a manipulative con artist jerk without meeting the criteria for narcissism. For me, what this story highlights more than anything else is this woman missing or ignoring red flags, and this man targeting this woman because she was desperate for companionship. Now, I want to be very, very clear about this. I am in no way judging this woman. She actually said herself, I was desperate for companionship. And what you need to be aware of is certain people are looking at that desperation as a target. Because when we're desperate for something, we tend to tolerate things that we otherwise wouldn't have tolerated. The easiest example I can give to you about this is we are all desperate for our jobs. So we will tolerate a boss who's not treating us super great. We'll tolerate poor work conditions because we really need this job. How many of you watching this video, if you won the lottery tomorrow, would quit your job immediately? The reason you would do that is because winning the lottery has a drastic and significant impact on your level of desperation. So now all of a sudden, I'm not willing to tolerate all of the things that I was tolerating before because this lottery win is making me not desperate. Well, this woman was in a place of desperation, and this man exploited it. And most of the time, if she were in a situation where she wasn't so desperate, she would have noticed early appearing red flags. For example, after meeting for just a few short weeks, he wants to move in with her, and he's telling her all of these wonderful things on why they should move in together, and him moving in with her benefits him. Those are red flags. Even with somebody that you really like, to move that fast, that quickly is alarming. She would have noticed that he's not producing what he said he's producing. Those are red flags. Just because he was leaving the house at 7 a.m. and coming back at 4 p.m., those are red flags, because you would have to notice, like, I'm going to work looks a very specific way. So it wouldn't, if she were watching closely and paying attention, She would have caught these things, and then the things that happened down the road would have never happened. The things that happened deeper into this story would have never happened. Now, again, I am not blaming the woman. It is this man's fault because he exploited that desperation. But what I do want to highlight is how important it is to be aware of our desperation, because simple human tendencies are, when we are desperate, we make much poorer decisions than when we come from a place of security. So when I was watching this story, all I could notice was this man noticed this woman's desperation and then exploited it. Now, this is 100% on him. This is totally his fault. And there's definitely something wrong with him. Like I just told you, I don't know if it's narcissism or if he's a sociopath or a psychopath or just a con artist jerk. I have no idea. But there's definitely something wrong with him. But we as people, we just need to be way more careful, because when we're in a place of desperation, we are much more exploitable than normal. And this woman admitted she was in a place of desperation, and she happened to meet this very horrible person who exploited that desperation. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, when you find yourself in a situation where everything just doesn't seem right, get out. Completely get out. It is totally okay to say, this does not feel right. This does not look right. There's something going on here. She talked about how when she lost the baby in April. So think about this for a minute. They meet in March. Within the month, they move in together. She is pregnant in April and then loses the baby. And she described how horrible he was and not there for her when she was dealing with the loss of having lost that baby. Kick him out then. If you kick him out then, you've now only known him for like 2 months. And then the later things with the house and the prostitutes and all those, that never happens because you've removed him. The moment someone shows you who they are, it is totally okay to say, get the bleep out. You don't have to continue to allow that person to be in your life. It is totally okay to change the locks, remove that person. You can call the police and have them escorted out. You can call siblings and friends, but it is okay to, once you notice these things, to remove somebody. Only a certain type of person would be able to do that. To be able to watch you lose a child and grieve and be in pain and not be there for her. And she clearly described he was not there for her, but yet she continued along this relationship with him. And I want to say to people, it is totally okay to remove somebody from your life, and just be aware how compromising it is when you go into a situation like a relationship or a job or whatever from a place of desperation, because that makes you much more easily exploitable. Again, I'm not saying that that's that woman's fault. It is clearly that man's fault. He did everything wrong. He is to blame. It is because he is a nasty jerk. But if we want to be more careful, we've got to be more mindful of our level of desperation when we go into situations like this. So, what did you guys think when you watched this series? Another thing I'll tell you is I'm a psychotherapist. I've been a practicing psychotherapist for almost 20 years. And everybody was telling me, like, this story is crazy and this story is nuts. It's actually not that crazy and not that nuts. As a psychotherapist, like, you wouldn't believe the things I've heard in my office and people doing to one another, and men manipulating women, women manipulating men, and putting themselves in very difficult situations with their partner. Like, this is not as uncommon as you might think that it is. And bad scenarios like this are not as uncommon as you might think that it is. I watched this story expecting to have like my ears blown off because of how crazy things were. But instead, to me, this was kind of a typical situation. It is not uncommon. Now, this is a bit extreme because it went on for a long time. I'm sure the COVID environment helped. Like, we were all a little bit desperate for a connection during COVID. So this was a bit extreme in terms of duration, but it is not uncommon that someone will marry someone and then realize this is not the person that I thought it was, and even have extreme realizations of this is not the person that I thought it was. So that's what I thought when I saw this video. I would love to hear what you guys thought when you watched this video series. You can find it on TikTok. It's over 50 parts. I'd love to hear what you guys thought of my take of this video. So please leave a comment below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, And make sure you hit the bell so you get notified each and every time we release a video here on this channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.